everyone. Thank you for joining me once again. I'm Chris Cebollero, editorial board member with EMS One and co-host of the Inside EMS podcast. Today, I want to share a bit about how leaders can deal with defensive employees. And when we think about our conflict resolution skills, this is a very, very big skill that we need to have, and it's a tool that we need to keep in our leadership toolbox. You know, conflict happens every day in every organization, and your ability to manage that conflict is something that will help you tremendously. Now, when we think about having good conflict resolution skills, part of those skills are dealing with defensive people. And in this video, I'm going to go ahead and give you some tips on how to do that. You know, it seems that in EMS, people always, their first reaction is always to become defensive when we question their medicine, when we present them with negative feedback, when we give them criticism, and those people are going to want to fight with you. And when it comes to someone that's defensive for a leader, that becomes, builds frustration, that causes tension. And to be honest with you, we just don't want to talk to that person, but we can't do that because we're their leader, we're their role model, we're their mentor. We've got to be able to help them understand what's going on and help them get out of that defensive mode. So let's lay a little bit of foundation first. Why do people become defensive? And really, this is just a parasympathetic response, right? In short, this is our fight or flight mechanism. So everything that we do, everything that we touch, everything that we see, everything that we smell and taste creates an electrical signal, goes to our spine, goes up through the foramen magnum, stops at the limbic system. And the limbic system is fight or flight. So now you start to get that parasympathetic response. Your blood pressure starts to raise. Your pulse starts to get faster. Your eyes start to dilate. You start to breathe a little bit quicker. And now you're ready for fight, or now you're ready to run away. Now that signal goes to the frontal lobe where logic and reasoning happen. So you're saying to yourself, you know what? Do I really need to be mad? Well, maybe not, but you still feel the emotion. The emotion doesn't go away. You may be able to reason, have logic of that, situation, but you still feel mad. You still feel frustrated. You still feel like you want to be defensive. And one of the things that we have to be able to think about is we have to be able to understand when people feel that way, it's just their natural response. And this is where self-awareness comes in, that we have to be able now to help people understand that they may be getting defensive. I got to tell you, I was this guy, right? I was the guy who would get defensive all the time. I was the guy who'd want to fight all the time. I was the guy that would want to argue all the time. And really, I just didn't want people getting the better of me. But this was something internal that I needed to deal with, nothing that was external. But I digress. Let's go ahead and talk about signs of someone who is preparing to become defensive. We know that these signs, number one, is their body language. What's one of the first things they're going to do? They're going to sit back in their chair, or they're going to cross their arms, right? They want to be able to keep themselves safe. You, as their leader, have to be able to read the body language. You have to be able to understand what's going on. I got to tell you what, when you listen to body language, you are going to learn so much more. People may be smiling. People may be nodding their head in agreement, but watch their eyes. Their eyes don't lie. You're going to be able to see in their eyes that they're still mad, or that they're still upset. When we have this nonverbal communication, it's something that we have to be able to become an expert at in understanding what's going on. Number two is they're going to start to argue to make their case. Now, they may not know that anything's wrong. They're going to think that what they did was right. And you have to remember that there are three sides to every story. There's my side, there's your side, and the truth. And by listening to people, you need to be able to marry those three things, because they may not think they're wrong. And you have to be able to help them understand that when they're making their case, it may not always be the right thing to do. And then number three is that they're always going to deny that something happens. Regardless of what people are saying and the proof that's presented, defensive people are always going to deny their involvement in the situation and try to get you to understand that they didn't do anything wrong. So this is that start. And again, this is part of the fight or flight. You may not be throwing punches, but you're using your verbal judo to make sure that you're keeping yourself as safe as you can. Now, how do we deal with these defensive people? And that's something that we always need to kind of keep track of. First off is you need to become a master of your communication skills. It's the way that you carry yourself. It's the way that you interact with people. It's the way that you get your point across. And when you have a defensive person, you need to be able to expose them as being defensive and try to derail them, because their mind is not thinking logically. It's having an emotional response. And in my book, Ultimate Leadership, 10 Rules for Success, my rule number one that I had to develop to be a great leader was never allow your emotions to dictate your actions. When your emotions are going, sometimes that's not the best rule to have, because your emotions will dictate your actions. But now as a leader, and you're trying to diffuse a defensive person, you need to be able to help them understand that they shouldn't allow their emotions to dictate your actions. Here's another point. Usually when somebody is becoming defensive with us, we automatically want to become defensive in response. Remember, it's fight or flight. We have those same emotions too. Those signals are stopping at our limbic system too. And it may be easy for us to become defensive, but we have to be able to remember that we're their leader, we're their role model, we're their mentor, and we need to be able to ensure that we have great communication and help to derail them. As part of your communication skills, it's okay that you have a let's agree to disagree mentality, because you could be saying something, they could be saying something, and rather than them agree or come to the compromise, you may just say, let's go ahead and agree to disagree. And you have to remember that communication is a science, and you have to be able to master that skill, because you need to be able to keep your involvement in crucial and critical and defensive conversations. And that's a whole other article in itself that we may get to as well. So the next component, or the next tip, it really is part of communication, but it's important that we talk about it separately. You have to be able to develop good active listening skills. This is vital in dealing with somebody who is defensive, because one of the things that you want to be able to understand is, why are they feeling the way that they feel? And I talk about it all the time. As leaders, we need to stop listening to what people are saying and instead start listening to what they're feeling. Because if we can hear their feelings, we will understand their words. And that's a really hard skill to get to. The next tip is, don't argue with people. Again, our defensive, our fight or flight is kicking in as well. We need to be able to be the best person. You know, they talk about the movie The Godfather, and that the best quote out of The Godfather is, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. Did I sound like him? But it's not. It's when Michael Corleone says it's not personal, it's strictly business. You have to remember that when people are attacking or when people are being defensive, not to take it personally. This is just business. And it's hard to disassociate ourselves with that, right? And then the next tip, ask more questions. Try to get to the core. Try to get to the foundation of why we're talking about the things that we're talking about and why this got to where we need it to be. The only way that you can get there is by asking more questions. You know what? So as leaders, we have to ensure that we're giving everybody the time and energy and the assistance that they need to be engaged and satisfied and productive at work. When a person is defensive and they're giving you an earful and arguing, you know, let them speak. You know, I used to have a best practice when someone would come in my office and they'd want to be able to give me an earful. I told them, I'm going to give you 7 minutes. Ready? Go. No one ever got to 7 minutes. I'll let them complain. I'll let them swear. I'll let them do whatever they need to do to ground themselves to get back to zero. And then we'll sit back when I say, now that you got that out, let's go ahead and see if we can find something that could help you feel a little bit more comfortable. Listen to what they have to say, get to the root cause, help them find a solution, and then get them back on the track of being engaged, satisfied, and productive. I want to thank you for joining me on this video. Remember to listen to the Inside EMS podcast with Kelly Grayson and myself. New shows come out every Friday, and we'll see you on the next article.